Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for joining me for another classic film review. Today, I will be talking about the 1938 film The Adventures of Robin Hood, directed by Michael Curtiz and William Keighley, and starring Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, Basil Rathbone, and Claude Rains. And this excellent cast is just one of the highlights of this very enjoyable film from 1938. This is an interesting film, Adventures of Robin Hood, for a couple of reasons. One is that, in a way, you could call it a blockbuster of its time. There's a great mix of action, adventure, romance, and humor in this film. The film was also shot in color, which was around already in 1938, but it was not always common. There were still many, many black and white films at this time. But color really adds a lot to this particular production, and I think it was a great decision to go that route. There's also a lot of great sword fighting in this film, which holds up really well in my opinion. This was, of course, long before CGI, computer graphics, any of that stuff. So all the effects are practical, and I have to say, I think they hold up very well, and they have their own charm, and they're almost kind of refreshing with all the CGI we see today, in my opinion. Adventures of Robin Hood also was nominated for 4 Oscars, which was a bit unusual for this type of, lighter action production. It was nominated for Best Picture but did not win, but it did win its other 3 Oscar nominations for art direction, film editing, and score. And while I haven't seen all the nominees in those categories from 1938, I would say Adventures of Robin Hood definitely deserved all 3 of these awards. Now, as far as the plot of this film, it is pretty much the typical Robin Hood story that's been done 100 times in film and television, but it is done very well. And I will say it's a lighter version than some of the newer versions that have been filmed, which are a bit darker in tone. There are a few slightly darker moments in this film, but it's pretty much on a PG level. I believe the film is rated PG. So it should be pretty enjoyable for most general audiences. The film is also paced very well. Sometimes films from this time period, the 1930s, are excellent films, but the pacing is a little sluggish. Films were made a bit differently in that time period, but this film is very fast moving. The scenes flow well, and there's a nice mix between action, humor, romance. It's not like all action at once and then all humor. There's a nice mix in the scenes that works pretty well. Which brings me to my few slight complaints in this film. The mood is a little bit odd at times. Sometimes the film does go from serious to funny, just like that, without any real warning. And there'll be a serious situation, and characters will just burst out laughing for apparently no reason. For me, it was a bit distracting and overdone once in a while. It doesn't destroy the film or anything, but it just seemed a little bit out of place here and there, but nothing too bad. Also, the supporting characters in this film aren't really fleshed out that well, in my opinion. Characters like Little John, Will Scarlet, Friar Tuck, they're well acted, but the characters aren't given very much to do in this version. They're pretty much just stock characters to help the plot move around. But these small complaints aside, I definitely think The Adventures of Robin Hood holds up very well, and I think it's worth watching for all film fans, not just classic film lovers, because it's kind of interesting to see how a big action production from this time was made, and there aren't really that many of them around from this time period, the late 1930s. So overall, I would say The Adventures of Robin Hood is a classic that has aged very well and holds up, and I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely a film I suggest for all fans of the Robin Hood story and just for lovers of film in general. So 4.5 out of 5 for The Adventures of Robin Hood, and as always, thank you very much for watching.